I never imagined I'd be burying my 5-year-old son. No parent ever does. And yet, here I stood gazing down at Noah's small white casket. His cherished blue blanket lay beside him, a tattered sentinel against the vast unknown because he always said it made him feel safe. Safe. A solace I couldn't provide when he needed it most. The weight of that realization crushed me, heavier than the hushed whispers of the congregation in the pews behind. They weren't just mourning Noah, they were dissecting me, carving up my life with cold surgical precision. I felt their stares burn into the back of my neck, their speculations like daggers piercing my spine. "Where's his wife?" I imagined them murmuring. "How could she not be here?" Small towns thrive on gossip, and I knew my absence wouldn't be their sole topic of conversation. No, now they had Claire's glaring omission to revel in, but the town didn't know what I did. Just minutes before entering the church, my phone had vibrated with a message from an unknown number. I'd glanced at it reflexively, expecting a condolence or another inquiry about the ceremony. Instead, what I saw chilled my blood. The photograph was stark, as if taken moments ago. Claire sprawled languidly by a poolside, her skin glistening under a Hawaiian sun. A young, tanned, and self-satisfied man had an arm slung around her. A cocktail glass rested in her manicured hand. Beneath the image, a message. "Thought you should see what your wife is really doing today. A concerned friend." For a fleeting moment, the image didn't compute. My brain refused to connect the woman I'd built a life with to the person in that photo. Claire wasn't at an important business meeting, as she told me. She wasn't sitting in the front row of our son's funeral, holding my hand. She was sipping margaritas in paradise, entangled with some stranger. The full force of the betrayal hit me instantly, but there was no time to process it. My mother's hand tightened on mine as she whispered, "Jacob, you're shaking." I was. The phone rattled in my grip until I shoved it into my pocket, as if concealing it could make it disappear. It didn't. That image was seared into my mind, tormenting me every time I blinked. Yet I couldn't break. Not now. I swallowed the rage that threatened to choke me and nodded to the funeral director. Somehow my legs carried me to the front pew and I sat where Claire should have been. I held my head high, shoulders squared, refusing to give the town the satisfaction of seeing me unravel. But my thoughts were anything but composed. They raced through the past few months, desperately trying to connect dots I'd missed before. Claire's late-night calls, her sudden, always urgent business trips, the way she'd started talking about needing personal space as Noah's condition worsened. I'd attributed it to grief, thinking we were coping differently. I'd been a fool. As the service began, I clenched my fists, nails digging into my palms to keep from erupting. The pastor spoke of Noah's love of life, his boundless energy even in the hardest days of his illness. My chest tightened as he mentioned Noah's favorite pastime, coloring white roses with food dye. I could almost see him again, his small hands stained blue and purple, his giggles filling the hospital room. My eyes darted to the bouquet on his coffin, white roses as far as the eye could see. Claire hated those roses. She said they were too plain. But I'd insisted they weren't for her, they were for Noah. She didn't deserve to be a part of this moment anyway. Then my phone vibrated again. Another message, this time from Claire. "So sorry I couldn't make it. Important business meeting. I'll make it up to you." Make it up. Make up for missing our son's funeral. Make up for sipping cocktails while I buried Noah. A tidal wave of fury washed over me, hot and all-consuming. It momentarily scorched the grief, leaving me with a singular thought. She had no idea what was coming. I wouldn't crumble as she expected. I wouldn't be the grieving widower she could manipulate. Claire might have abandoned us when we needed her most, but I'd ensure her betrayal wouldn't go unpunished. That promise solidified as I rose to deliver the eulogy. I looked out at the crowd, at the faces of neighbors, colleagues, and family friends, and forced myself to speak. Every word was for Noah. Every story of his joy and strength was a vow to protect his legacy, to keep Claire's actions from defiling his memory. I didn't let my voice waver. I didn't shed a tear. I saved them for later when I was alone. Today wasn't about my pain or Claire's treachery. Today was about Noah. But deep down, I knew one thing. Claire thought she could betray me and walk away unscathed. She was wrong. So wrong. The wake was a farce. People offered condolences with pitying eyes and rehearsed phrases, milling around my parents' living room as if it were some grim tableau. Plates of untouched cookies and casseroles cluttered every surface. The air buzzed with whispers that made the hairs on the back of my neck prickle. Everyone knew Claire wasn't there, and their silence spoke volumes more than their words. I moved through the room like a ghost, offering strained smiles to neighbors, nodding absently at distant relatives. The sympathy felt like an insult, not because it wasn't deserved, but because I didn't want their pity. I wanted their honesty. I wanted someone to grab my arm and confess they'd seen the photo too, that they knew what she was doing, that they'd seen who she'd become. But no one did. Claire's parents, Diana and Howard, hovered near the kitchen, their presence as unwelcome as their judgmental stares. They'd barely spoken to me all day, yet I could feel their unspoken accusations. To them, I was always the problem. I wasn't attentive enough, not devoted enough. Claire was their golden child, and nothing she did could tarnish that image. Diana finally approached me as I stood by the fireplace staring at a framed photo of Noah. It was one of my favorites, his gap-toothed grin as he showed off the results of one of his science experiments. The petals of a white rose were stained vibrant blue, his hands covered in food dye. He was so proud that day. I gripped the frame tightly, the glass cold against my palms. "Jacob," Diana said, her voice laced with a sweetness that didn't match her sharp eyes. "You were so strong today. It's a shame Claire couldn't be here, but she grieves in her own way. You know how hard this has been for her." "Hard for her?" My grip on the frame tightened as I turned to face her. She looked at me with a slight concern, the kind that barely veiled criticism. Her words were like a slap, each syllable digging deeper into my simmering rage. "I'm sure it has," I replied, my voice colder than I intended, though I imagine Hawaii is a good distraction from all the hardship. Diana's expression flickered just for a moment. She quickly recovered, her lips pressing into a thin line. "Jacob, grief makes people act uncharacteristically. Claire needed some space to process things. You should try to be more understanding." Understanding? My jaw clenched as I fought to maintain my composure. She didn't know, did she? Or maybe she did and she simply didn't care. I wanted to scream at her, to shove the photo on my phone in her face and force her to acknowledge the truth. But I didn't. Instead, I turned away, setting Noah's picture back on the mantel with trembling hands. My mother appeared beside me, her presence a balm in a way nothing else was. "Diana," she said, her tone sharp enough to cut through the tension, "I think you've said enough." Diana bristled but didn't argue. She retreated toward the kitchen, leaving my mother and me in heavy silence. "Don't let her get to you," Mom said softly, placing a hand on my forearm. "She's just trying to deflect. She knows what Claire did." The admission hit me like a punch to the gut. "You think she knows?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "She's her mother," Mom said simply. "Of course she knows." Her words confirmed what I'd feared. This wasn't just Claire's betrayal. It was a family affair. Diana and Howard had likely known all along, choosing to protect Claire instead of holding her accountable. The thought made my blood boil. As the wake lingered, I retreated to my father's study, desperately needing a moment of silence. I sank into his worn leather armchair, the day's exhaustion settling over me like an unbearable weight. My mind raced, filled with fragmented memories, each one laced with questions I couldn't yet answer. The business trips, the late-night calls, the way Claire had started to distance herself, not just from me, but from Noah. At first it had been subtle, a missed doctor's appointment here, a forgotten bedtime story there, but over time it became clear she wasn't fully present. I'd attributed it to the stress of Noah's illness, never suspecting something more sinister lay beneath. I pulled out my phone, the photo of Claire and her lover staring back at me maliciously from the screen. My thumb hovered over the delete button, but I couldn't bring myself to press it. This wasn't just proof of her infidelity, it was a reminder of what I was up against. I didn't know what my next move would be, but one thing was clear. I wouldn't let her get away with this. Not after she abandoned me. Not after she abandoned Noah. Claire thought she could escape the consequences of her actions, but she was wrong. Sitting in the dim light of the study, my anger solidified into resolve. This wasn't just about revenge, it was about justice. For Noah, for me, for everything we'd lost to her selfishness. I'd make her regret ever thinking she could betray me and walk away unscathed. The days after the funeral were a blur of condolences, casseroles, and sleepless nights. People came and went, uttering words that felt more rehearsed than heartfelt. He's in a better place now. He's not suffering anymore. Their well-meaning attempts to comfort me only hollowed me further. What better place could there be than in my arms, laughing at cartoons or insisting on pancakes for dinner? Grief clung to me like a second skin, but beneath it, rage simmered like a storm, ready to break. The photograph of Claire in Hawaii remained etched in my mind, haunting me every time I closed my eyes. She hadn't just been absent from Noah's funeral. She'd been celebrating her freedom, as if our son's death was her ticket to paradise. I busied myself cleaning Noah's room, hoping the distraction would dull the edge of my pain. His favorite stuffed penguin sat on his bed, worn and slightly lopsided from years of hugs. I picked it up, the familiar weight bringing a fresh wave of tears. He'd carried it everywhere, even to the hospital. As I set the penguin back on his pillow, something on Claire's side of the room caught my eye. A stack of papers on her desk, carelessly left in plain sight. It wasn't like Claire to leave anything in disarray. Her life was a series of meticulously planned lists and color-coded schedules. Curiosity, or perhaps instinct, pulled me closer. The top sheet struck me cold. It was a life insurance policy. Noah's name was printed in bold at the top, and Claire was listed as the sole beneficiary. My heart pounded as I flipped through the pages, each one revealing more than the last. The policy was worth $1 million, taken out just 6 months after Noah's diagnosis. I had never been consulted, never even seen these documents before. What struck me most was an amendment. Weeks before Noah's death, Claire had removed me as a beneficiary. Her signature stared up at me, a self-satisfied reminder of a decision she'd made without me. My hands trembled as I shuffled through the stack, finding receipts for loans she'd taken out against the policy. She had used that money. For what? Plane tickets? Poolside cocktails? Her lover's expensive taste? I collapsed into the chair, staring at the mess of papers. This wasn't just betrayal, this was theft. Claire had stolen from our family, from Noah, to fund her escape. The realization hit me like a freight train. Noah's death wasn't just the end of my son's life. It was the moment Claire chose to bury our marriage along with him. My phone vibrated on the desk, jolting me from my thoughts. The number was hidden, and for a moment I considered ignoring it, but something told me to answer. Hello? My voice was hoarse, the weight of everything pressing down on me. I need to talk to you, a woman's voice said. It was unfamiliar, hesitant, but filled with urgency. It's about Claire. I gripped the phone tighter. Who is this? My name is Mia. She paused as if weighing her next words. I know what she's been doing. I know about Hawaii, and I know you're not going to like what I'm about to tell you. My chest tightened. Why should I trust you? You shouldn't, she admitted. But you need to hear me out. Meet me at the coffee shop on Main. The call disconnected, leaving me staring at my phone. Mia. The name meant nothing to me, but the urgency in her voice was impossible to ignore. Part of me hesitated. What if this was a mistake? What if it was some lunatic with too much time on their hands? But another part, the one that couldn't stop replaying that image of Claire in Hawaii, urged me to go. I needed answers, and whoever this Mia was, it seemed she had them. I grabbed the papers, stuffing them into a folder. If Mia had information, I was ready to meet her with my own proof in hand. The rage I'd suppressed since the funeral simmered just beneath the surface, threatening to erupt. As I left the house, I looked back at Noah's room. The penguin sat on the bed, a silent witness to how everything was falling apart. I silently promised him I'd make this right. Whatever Mia said, whatever truth she brought, I was ready for it. Or at least I thought I was. What I didn't realize then was that this meeting wouldn't just confirm my suspicions. It would open the door to something far worse, something I couldn't have imagined even in my darkest moments. The coffee shop on Main was the kind of place Claire used to despise. Plain, unassuming, devoid of the lavish indulgence she always demanded in her life. As I entered, the scent of burnt coffee beans and stale pastries hit me. One glance was enough to spot her. She sat at a corner table by the window, a woman with dark red hair pulled back in a neat ponytail, her posture rigid. She wasn't what I'd expected. Mia. She didn't look up as I approached, instead stirring her coffee slowly and deliberately. Her phone lay screen down on the table, a small notebook beside it. I pulled out the chair opposite her, the folder thudding onto the table. She finally looked up, her green eyes sharp and assessing. "I didn't think you'd come," she said, her voice low but steady. "You have 5 minutes to explain why I'm here," I said, leaning back in my chair, arms crossed. She raised an eyebrow, unfazed by my tone. "Fine, I'll cut to the chase. Your wife Claire has been seeing my ex-boyfriend for over a year." The words were a punch to the gut, but I didn't flinch. "I already know that," I said indifferently, though the bitterness in my voice betrayed me. "Oh, you do?" She tilted her head, her tone mocking. "Do you know about the money or how they're planning to use it to start their little dream life in Maui?" I froze. "What money?" Mia leaned forward, her eyes narrowing. "The life insurance policy. The $1 million payout your wife got after she removed your son's name from the documents. She promised half of it to Brandon, my ex, so they could buy a beach house." My stomach churned. I wanted to accuse her of lying, to shove my chair back and walk out. But I didn't. Instead, I stayed, my fingers digging into the edge of the table. "And how the hell do you know all of this?" She chuckled without humor. "Brandon isn't very discreet. He's been bragging about it for weeks." At first, I didn't believe him. Claire always seemed too sophisticated for a guy like him. But then he started showing me proof. Mia reached for her phone, scrolling quickly before sliding it across the table. The screen was filled with text messages. Messages from Claire to Brandon. "Claire, the payout came through. It's more than enough. We'll be out of here by the end of the month." Brandon, "Maui awaits, baby. Just don't let him suspect anything." Claire, "He's too broken to think straight. It's already done." My chest tightened, my breath shallow as I read each line. The Claire in those messages was someone I didn't recognize. Cold, calculating, detached. "I thought he was exaggerating," Mia continued. "But then I found more. Bank transfers, flight schedules, even a photo of the house they plan to buy. She was funneling money into an account in both their names." I stared at her, my mind working furiously. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because she's playing us both," Mia said plainly. "She promised Brandon a new life, but I've seen how she operates. As soon as she doesn't need him anymore, she'll drop him just like she's dropping you. And me? I'm already collateral damage. I have nothing left to lose." Her words hung in the air, sharp and bitter. I didn't trust her, not completely. But I couldn't ignore the evidence she was laying before me. "What do you want from me?" I asked, my voice low. Mia leaned back, crossing her arms. "Revenge, justice, call it what you will. Brandon's not walking away from this unscathed, and Claire certainly isn't either. You want to destroy them? I can help you. But we have to act fast." I stared at her, searching for any sign of deceit. She met my gaze directly, unflinching. I didn't trust her motives. There was too much anger, too much venom behind her words. But I knew one thing. Claire had lied to me, stolen from me, betrayed me in ways I couldn't have even imagined. "I'm in," I said at last, my voice like steel. Mia nodded, her expression softening slightly. "Good, because this is just the beginning." She reached into her bag, pulled out a thick envelope and slid it across the table. "Everything you need to know is in here. Names, dates, bank accounts, it's all connected. We just need to find the right thread to pull." I picked up the envelope, its weight matching the heaviness in my chest. As I stood to leave, Mia called out to me. "Jacob," she said, her tone softer. I stopped, looking back at her. "I'm sorry about your son. Whatever else happens, I think Claire is broken, not you." Her words lingered in the air as I stepped out of the coffee shop into the cold night air. My mind raced, filled with possibilities, next steps, ways I could make Claire and Brandon pay for what they'd done. This was no longer just about vengeance. It was about reclaiming what little dignity I had left, about protecting Noah's memory from people who thought they could profit from his death. They had no idea who they were dealing with. I spent the night poring over the envelope Mia had given me. It was a labyrinth of text messages, bank statements, and photographs, each one a gut punch. Every page confirmed what I already feared. Claire wasn't just a selfish woman running off with her lover. She was a schemer, a strategist, and her betrayal ran deeper than I could ever have imagined. The money trail was damning. Deposits and transfers into an account I didn't recognize, all in Claire's name, linked directly to Brandon. But what struck me was the evidence of collaboration. Her parents, Diana and Howard, were implicated, their names peppered emails and checks related to non-existent business ventures. I should have seen it earlier, the way Diana and Howard always doted on Claire, treating her as if she could do no wrong. They'd always blamed me for our family's problems, subtly undermining me with caustic remarks disguised as advice. But now I realized they weren't just enabling her, they were actively helping her. The turning point came when I discovered an email exchange between Diana and Claire. "Diana, Jacob won't suspect a thing. He's too focused on Noah. Just make sure the papers are signed before he catches on." "Claire, he won't notice. He's too broken to care. And once it's done, it's done." "What papers?" My heart pounded as I shuffled through more documents, searching for answers. Then I found it. A transfer of ownership agreement for our family home. The place where I'd grown up, where Noah had spent his last days, was being sold. Claire had forged my signature, making it look as though I'd agreed to the sale. They were planning to take everything, the insurance payout, the house, even our joint savings. I could almost hear Diana's sharp, dismissive voice in my head. "It's what's best for Claire." The rage I'd held back exploded, but I had no outlet. I paced the living room, clenching my fists, trying to keep my breathing even. They thought they could manipulate me, use my grief to blind me. They thought they could steal everything I had left and walk away unpunished. But they were wrong. By morning, my plan began to take shape. I needed more proof, more leverage, and I knew exactly where to start. My mother, always my bedrock, had hinted at something for days, things she'd seen and suspected. If anyone could help me connect the dots, it was her. I found her in the kitchen, a steaming mug of tea clutched in her hands. She looked up as I entered, her sharp eyes narrowing immediately. "What's wrong?" she asked, setting her mug down. "They're trying to sell the house," I said plainly. "Claire and her parents, they forged my signature." Her face tightened, lips pressing into a thin line. "I knew it," she murmured. "You knew?" I asked, leaning forward. "I suspected," she admitted. "Diana's been circling for months, asking questions about the property. She even tried to get your father to sign something when he was disoriented, but I intercepted it." It hit me like a blow to the chest. My father, with his fading memory, was another pawn in their game. They had no shame, no limit to how far they would go. "She said it was just a precaution," my mother continued, her voice trembling with anger. "But I didn't trust her. I saved the papers. They're in the study." She didn't need to say more. I rushed to the study, tearing through drawers until I found the documents. There it was, a legal form authorizing the sale of the house, with my father's signature at the bottom, a forgery. "They thought he wouldn't remember," my mother said, standing behind me. "They thought I wouldn't notice. But I've been watching them, Jacob. Diana has always been manipulative, but this is different." I sat down, the weight of everything crashing down on me. "They're not just after the money," I said quietly. "They're after everything. The house, the savings, everything Noah and I loved." My mother placed a hand on my shoulder, her grip firm. Then don't let them win. Fight back. Her words lit a fire within me. This wasn't just about me anymore. This was about Noah's legacy, about protecting the little I had left of him. Claire and her family thought they could outsmart me, but they'd underestimated one thing: my resolve. They wanted to play games? Fine. But I wasn't going to sit back and let them take everything. If they thought I was broken, they were about to learn just how wrong they were. I spent the rest of the day assembling every piece of evidence I'd found: bank statements, emails, the documents from Mia's envelope. It all began to coalesce into a larger picture. Claire and her parents had been planning this for months, perhaps even longer. They'd been careful, calculating, but they'd made mistakes, and I was going to use every one of them. As night fell, I sat in Noah's room holding his stuffed penguin. "I'll make it right," I whispered into the darkness. "I promise you, Noah, I won't let them take what's ours." The storm inside me had quieted, replaced by something colder, more dangerous. Claire and her family thought they could destroy me, but they'd forgotten one crucial thing. I wasn't just grieving. I was preparing. Claire thought she was untouchable. Her carefully crafted lies, the forged documents, the money funneled into secret accounts. She believed she'd accounted for every angle. But what she hadn't accounted for was me finding the cracks. That was the advantage of being underestimated. It gave you the edge. And after seeing what she and her parents were willing to do, I knew I had to strike first. The house was the key. It wasn't just a property, it was a piece of my family's soul. My father had built it with his own hands, nail by nail, plank by plank. It was the place I'd grown up, where Noah had learned to walk, and where we'd sat countless nights, holding him through the toughest days of his illness. It was hallowed ground, and Claire, she wanted to sell it to fund her escape. That morning I called Marcus, an old friend who'd transitioned from being on our high school debate team to becoming a sharp-witted attorney. He owed me a favor, and now was the time to collect. "Jacob," Marcus said after I'd laid it all out, his tone grave, "this is messy. If they forged your signature, we can challenge the sale, but we'll need more than your word. We need proof, witnesses, documents, anything that shows their fraudulent activity." "I have plenty," I replied, thinking of the pile of evidence Mia had handed over and the forged documents my mother had intercepted. "But I need to know how we stop this before it goes too far." Marcus sighed on the other end of the line. "We need to move fast. If they finalize the sale before we take action, it'll be a nightmare to reverse. Let me pull some strings and look into court filings. In the meantime, gather everything you can. Leave nothing to chance." I thanked him and hung up, my mind already working. Marcus was right. Time was of the essence. Claire and her parents weren't wasting any, and neither could I. I started by spreading everything Mia had given me across a corkboard in my father's study, like a detective assembling a case. The bank transfers, the emails, the photos, it all painted a damning picture. But I needed more. My mother was my first ally. She had been closely observing Diana's manipulations for months and was fiercely determined to help. "Your father may not remember everything clearly," she said, "but I do. Diana and Howard tried more than once to get him to sign those papers when he was confused. I kept records every time they showed up here unannounced." She handed me a small notebook, its pages filled with dates and detailed accounts of their visits. It was another piece of evidence, another layer to add to the case I was building. Next, I contacted Mia. As much as I hated relying on her, she had an insight into Claire's plans that I couldn't ignore. "They're meeting with the realtor tomorrow to finalize the sale," she said over the phone. "If you're going to stop them, you need to be there." "How do you know?" I asked, suspicion creeping into my voice. "Because Claire doesn't see me as a threat," Mia replied. "She keeps me updated, thinking I'll just roll over. But she doesn't realize I'm now one step ahead of her." Her bitterness was palpable, and while I didn't trust her completely, I knew she was right about one thing. Claire had underestimated us both. With all the pieces of the puzzle falling into place, I spent the rest of the day preparing. I copied every document, noted every detail, and ensured I had backups. I was leaving nothing to chance. By the time night fell, the study was a battlefield of papers and plans. My mother came in, a cup of tea in her hand, and placed it next to me. "You have that look," she said. "What look?" I asked, tearing my gaze from the corkboard. "The same look your father used to get when someone tried to cheat him," she said with a faint smile. "Don't let them take this from us, Jacob. Don't let them take Noah's house." Her words struck me like lightning. It wasn't just about me or even the house. It was about protecting what Noah loved, what he'd left behind. The fury I'd felt over Claire's betrayal sharpened into something more acute, more focused. "They won't," I promised. The next morning I dressed like a man going to war, suit pressed, tie knotted, briefcase in hand. Marcus had already filed a motion to halt the sale, but I knew I needed to show up and confront them face to face. As I walked out the door, my mother handed me something small, the worn stuffed penguin. "Take him with you," she said softly. "For luck." I tucked it into my briefcase. The familiar weight gave me a surge of confidence. It wasn't just a toy, it was a reminder of Noah's laughter, his resilience, his love of life that Claire had so easily discarded. When I arrived at the realtor's office, I saw Claire's car parked outside. Inside, she and Diana were already seated at the table, their polished smiles masking the lies they'd spun for months. "Jacob," Claire said, feigning surprise as I entered, "what are you doing here?" I placed the briefcase on the table, opening it to reveal the evidence of their deceit. "Stopping you," I said coldly. The look on her face was priceless, but it wasn't the end. Not by a long shot. Claire's face paled the moment I opened the briefcase. She hadn't been prepared for this. Neither of them had. Diana sat beside her, her usual haughty demeanor faltering as her eyes darted to the documents spread across the table. The realtor, caught in the crossfire of a battle he hadn't signed up for, looked supremely uncomfortable. "What is this?" Claire asked, her voice laced with feigned confusion, though the tremor in it betrayed her nervousness. "You tell me," I countered, leaning forward. "Because it looks like a stack of evidence proving you and your mother have been forging documents, siphoning money, and attempting to sell this house behind my back." Diana's lips thinned. "Jacob, there's no need for theatrics. This is simply a matter of real estate." "A simple matter of real estate?" I snapped, my voice rising. "This is my home, Diana, my family's home, and you tried to take it by forging my signature. Did you think I wouldn't notice? Or did you think I was too broken to fight back?" Claire shifted uncomfortably, her polished confidence crumbling. "Jacob, please, we've been under a lot of stress. We were just trying to handle things while you were grieving." I slammed my hand on the table, making everyone jump. "Don't you dare use Noah's death to justify this. While I was burying my son, you were plotting to steal everything we built together. And for what? To run off with Brandon and live your little Hawaiian fantasy life?" Her eyes widened. I'd hit a nerve. "You don't understand." "I understand perfectly," I cut her off. "I understand that you've been lying to me for months. I understand that you've been funneling money into secret accounts, and I understand that you're willing to destroy the little I have left for a cheap thrill." Diana tried to interject, but I wasn't finished. "And you," I said, turning to her, "you've been complicit in all of it. Manipulating my father, forging signatures, covering for Claire while she betrayed our family. Did you honestly think I wouldn't find out?" For the first time, Diana looked flustered. "Jacob, you're being unreasonable. We were just trying to protect Claire's interests. You've been unstable since Noah's death." "Unstable?" I laughed bitterly. "You mean grieving, mourning the son I loved more than anything while Claire was busy planning her getaway? If anyone's unstable, it's her. And you for enabling her." The realtor cleared his throat, clearly regretting his decision to come to work that day. I think I should step out." "No," I said sharply, turning to him. "You're about to see just how illegal this so-called real estate deal is." I pulled out my phone and played the recording Mia had given me. A conversation between Claire and Brandon discussing their plans for the insurance money. "Claire, the payout's in the account. Once the house sells, we'll have enough for the down payment on the Maui place." "Brandon, what about Jacob?" "Claire, he's too distracted to notice. He'll never figure it out." Silence filled the room. Claire's face was ashen and Diana's composure utterly collapsed. "You recorded me?" Claire whispered, her voice barely audible. "No," I said, leaning back in my chair. "But someone who knows the kind of person you are did, and she was more than happy to help me expose you." Claire's eyes darted toward the door as if contemplating an escape. "You can't prove anything," she said weakly. "Oh, but I can." I slid more documents across the table, bank statements, emails, and evidence of forged signatures. Every transaction, every doctored paper, every lie, it was all here. "And Marcus has already filed a motion to halt the sale. This house isn't going anywhere." The silence stretched, heavy and suffocating. Claire looked to Diana, but this time her mother could offer no comforting words. "You thought I'd just roll over and let you win," I said, my voice low but firm. "But you underestimated me. You always have. This is over." Diana opened her mouth to speak, but the door burst open before she could utter a word. Marcus walked in, a stack of legal papers in his hands. "Sorry I'm late," he said, his tone casual. "I was just at the courthouse, filing an injunction to freeze all property transactions related to this house." He placed the papers on the table and turned to the realtor. "You might want to back out of this deal. It's going to get very messy." The realtor didn't hesitate. "I think that's my cue to leave," he muttered, grabbing his briefcase and practically bolting out the door. Once he was gone, I turned to Claire and Diana. "You have two choices," I said. "You can walk away now, leave this house, and give up on any scheme you've concocted. Or you can fight me and I'll make sure both of you end up in court and on the front page of every newspaper in town." Claire stared at me, her mask of control completely gone. For the first time, I saw fear in her eyes. Diana, however, wasn't ready to give up. "You're bluffing," she spat. I met her gaze directly. "Try me." Claire grabbed Diana's arm. "Mom, stop. He's not bluffing." Diana wavered, but the look in Claire's eyes convinced her. Without another word, they stood and walked out, their once confident strides now shaky and uncertain. As the door closed behind them, I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. Marcus clapped me on the back. "You did good," he said, but I wasn't celebrating yet. This was just one battle. The war wasn't over. The aftermath began the moment Claire and Diana exited the realtor's office. They left behind the self-assurance they had worn for so long, their meticulously crafted facade shattered. But for me, that moment was just the beginning. The confrontation had halted the sale of the house, but the damage they'd attempted to inflict was far more extensive than I'd realized. Marcus wasted no time, filing motions to freeze all joint assets and accounts. They weren't just after the house, Jacob, he told me as we sat in his office later that day. They were playing a long game, trying to strip you of everything you own. If we don't act fast, they could still slip away. I nodded, the weight of his words sinking in. "What's our next step?" "We expose them," he said simply. "All of them. Claire, Diana, Howard. Everyone involved in this. We'll press charges for fraud, grand larceny, and anything else we can prove." It was a daunting prospect, but I was ready. This wasn't just about getting justice for myself. It was about protecting Noah's memory and ensuring Claire and her family faced the full consequences of their actions. The first step was gathering further evidence. Marcus and I meticulously combed through every document, email, and transaction we could find, building a case that left no room for doubt. Mia proved to be an invaluable ally, providing even more damning information about Claire's secret accounts and her dealings with Brandon. "You wouldn't believe how much she bragged to him," Mia said during one of our meetings. "She thought he was her accomplice, but Brandon was sloppy. He left a trail everywhere." The evidence painted a grim picture of Claire's betrayal. Not only had she siphoned money from the life insurance policy, but she'd also transferred funds from our joint savings, creating bogus expenses to cover her tracks. Diana and Howard had been complicit every step of the way, using their influence to cover up her actions and manipulate legal documents. Under Marcus's guidance, we filed a civil lawsuit against Claire and her parents. The legal process was grueling, every step a reminder of how much they had tried to take from me. But as the weeks wore on, the tide began to turn. Claire's lover, Brandon, became the first crack in their armor. Faced with mounting pressure, he turned against her, providing testimony that confirmed everything Mia and I had uncovered. His statements validated Claire's intentions to steal the insurance payout and use it to start a new life in Hawaii. Diana and Howard weren't so quick to give in. They attempted to turn the narrative, portraying themselves as victims who were merely trying to protect Claire during a difficult time. But the evidence against them was overwhelming. Emails, bank statements, and forged documents all pointed to their active involvement in the scheme. The final blow came when Marcus uncovered an even deeper layer of deception. Claire and Diana had been trying to get my father to sign away not just the house, but other family assets as well. Marcus found proof that they'd targeted him during moments of confusion brought on by his dementia, hoping to exploit his condition for their gain. "This isn't just fraud," Marcus said as he showed me the documents. "This is elder abuse, and the courts aren't going to take it lightly." As the charges were pressed, the weight of their crimes finally caught up to them. Claire, Diana, and Howard faced a multitude of legal consequences, from fraud to grand larceny and conspiracy. The public exposure was brutal. Their once respected reputations in our small town were reduced to gossip and shame. Claire, of course, tried to play the victim. "I didn't know what I was doing," she claimed during a deposition. "I was grieving. I made mistakes." But her tears fooled no one, not the lawyers, not the judge, and certainly not me. She had made her choices, and now she was paying for them. In the end, the court ruled in my favor. The house was officially mine again, along with the remaining assets Claire hadn't managed to drain. The life insurance payout she'd planned to use for her new life was frozen and redirected to its original purpose, to support children battling cancer in Noah's name. It wasn't just a legal victory, it was a moral one. Every step of the way, I had fought to protect what mattered most, my son's memory and the legacy he left behind. But even with the legal battle won, the scars of their betrayal remained. Claire's actions had broken something deep inside me that couldn't be easily mended. She had shown me the depths of her selfishness, and while I had triumphed over her schemes, it had come at a heavy cost. As for Diana and Howard, they retreated from public view, their reputations shattered. They had built their influence for years, only to see it crumble in the face of their greed. I couldn't bring Noah back, but I could ensure that Claire and her family never caused anyone the kind of pain they had inflicted upon me again. The ramifications were complete. The house was secure, the money redirected to a worthy cause, and the people who had tried to destroy me were facing the consequences of their actions. But the fight wasn't over, not for me, because while the legal battle was behind me, the journey to healing had only just begun. The house was quiet now, a silence that settled deep in my chest. For months, it had been filled with the chaos of lawyers, documents, and the heavy weight of betrayal. But now, with the legal battle concluded and Claire and her family facing the consequences of their actions, there was a sense of peace, a bittersweet calm that came with the knowledge that the storm had passed, even if the damage remained. Noah's room was as he'd left it, his favorite stuffed penguin perched on his bed, its worn seams a testament to how much he'd loved it. The colorful drawings he'd taped to the walls were still there, and for a moment I could almost hear his laughter. I sat on the edge of his bed, holding the penguin, letting the memories wash over me. The court's decision had ensured the house remained in the family, but it wasn't just about the house anymore. It was about Noah's legacy, about protecting everything he loved, and ensuring his memory stood for something more than just pain. That's why I took the insurance payout, every last cent Claire had tried to steal, and established the Noah Thompson Foundation. The foundation would fund pediatric cancer research and support families going through what we had. It felt right, as if Noah would have wanted it. He was always full of compassion, even when he was suffering himself. The first grant was given to the children's oncology ward where he'd spent so much time. I visited the hospital to meet the families it would help, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I felt a spark of hope. Noah's name would live on, not just in my heart, but in the lives of those he would continue to touch. But moving forward didn't mean forgetting. On a cool autumn morning, I made my way to the cemetery. The air was crisp, the leaves crunching underfoot as I approached Noah's grave. His headstone was simple, just as he would have wanted it, with a small engraving of a penguin in the corner. I knelt, brushing away a few fallen leaves, and placed the stuffed penguin at the base of the stone. "You'd be proud, buddy," I whispered. "The house is safe, the foundation's going, and your memory is helping a lot of people. I promised you I'd make it right, and I did." The wind rustled through the trees, and for a moment I felt as if Noah was there, his spirit woven into the world around me. "Your grandmother outsmarted them all," I said, a faint smile touching my lips. "She was brilliant, just like you always said." As I stood, my father approached, his steps slow but steady. His memory wasn't what it used to be, but today his eyes were clear. "He's at peace now," he said softly, his voice even. "I hope so," I replied, my throat tightening. He touched the penguin, his hand lingering on the soft fabric. "Noah told me something once, just before he passed. He said, don't worry about Dad. He's stronger than everyone thinks." I swallowed, tears blurring my vision. "He said that?" My father nodded, a faint smile touching his lips. "He was right, you know." We stood there in silence, the weight of grief and love commingling in the crisp air. A monarch butterfly landed on the headstone, its delicate wings catching the sunlight like stained glass. My father reached for it, but I gently touched his arm. "Let it be," I said quietly. The butterfly took flight, spiraling upwards, free and unburdened. I watched it until it disappeared, understanding for the first time that true strength wasn't about revenge or winning, it was about letting go. I put an arm around my father's shoulders, leading him back to the car. Pancakes?" I asked, a faint smile finding its way to my face. His face lit up, a rare moment of clarity shining through. "Pancakes? Noah always loved pancakes." "He did," I said, my heart full of a bittersweet warmth. As we drove away, I looked back at the penguin standing sentinel at the headstone. It wasn't just a symbol of Noah, it was a reminder of everything we had fought for. The butterfly had shown me the way forward. It wasn't about forgetting the pain, but about honoring the love that came with it. And as I drove home with my father, the weight of the past finally began to recede. Noah was gone, but his spirit remained, guiding me toward a life where love and resilience could coexist with loss. It wasn't a triumph, it was a survival, and for the first time in a long time, that was enough. Ladies and gentlemen, since you've listened to the end of this story, please subscribe to the channel and write in the comments which state you're watching from. Let's see what percentage of elite viewers make it to the end.